Good afternoon, and I welcome you all to this discussion. Today's a bit different, probably the first time we're having this discussion online, but I'm very happy to note that we have over 60 participants following us online through Zoom, so a very warm welcome to everyone. I would like also to thank the panel who accepted our invitation, the German Embassy for organizing, co-hosting this event with us, and the German Maltese Circle for hosting this event also here. The way we're going to proceed is first we have an introduction from the ambassador to outline and give an overview of the main priorities of the German presidency of the Council of the EU. And then we have a bit of an of a discussion with our panel members, but I also invite the persons following us through Zoom to raise their hands if they would like to ask a question, and then we'll take a number of questions and hopefully try to answer and reply to your queries as much as possible. Before I start the discussion, I think we need to put a bit and the discussion within the context in which we're having this discussion. And first and foremost, to highlight that the Council of the EU is just one of the main institutions of the complete EU institutional framework. So I think that has to be put into perspective. And there's also the role of the European Commission, the Parliament, and the role of the individual member states. But I think something that also needs to be put into perspective for this discussion is the current situation which we're living in. I think where before perhaps the presidencies used to have and be a bit dictated by the geopolitical situation of the particular member state taking on the presidency. The coronavirus blurred these geopolitical situations, and really we have to tackle the issue together, as is the main theme of this presidency. So, Ambassador, I would like to leave it to you to give us a bit of a brief introduction of the priorities.
Thank you, Mandy. Thank you for bringing about this event. Thank you, ministers, for being present this afternoon. Let's begin by thanking our Croatian colleagues, our predecessors in the presidency, for doing an excellent job under particularly difficult and challenging circumstances. Our German presidency is the first part of the so-called trio presidency we share with Portugal and Slovenia. So, second half of 2020, it's Germany. First half of 2021, it's Portugal. And then the second half of 2021, it's going to be Slovenia. Between the three of us, we have coordinated our planning as closely as possible. It is our common ambition to work in unity and solidarity in the coming 6 and 12 and 18 months in order to draw up and refine a common vision for Europe. Expectations are high, the challenges numerous. We are ambitious as well as realistic. We'll have to stay focused in order to achieve our goals, and we count on the continued support from all our EU partners, without whom success will not be possible. Before I try and walk you through just a few essential elements of our program, and I repeat, a few essential elements, because if I would present you the whole program, we would spend at least 2 or 3 hours, and that would be torture, and that's something we reject very strongly. Before I do that, let me outline very briefly our strategic overarching priorities. That's of course climate, that's digitalization, that's innovation, that's the rule of law, and of course external action. Now back to, again, some important elements of our program. We want to coordinate EU efforts to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic. Mandy, you very rightly pointed to that problem. We have to improve EU crisis management. We have to strengthen EU self-dependence. And we have to work on a coordinated exit strategy from restrictions which are still in force in most of our countries today. 2, finance, of course, an extremely big chunk of work ahead of us. As a result of COVID-19, we are dealing not only with finalizing the new multi-annual financial framework to the tune of about 1,100 billion euros. There also will be the so-called Next Generation EU recovery instrument. And you'll probably remember that President Macron of France and Chancellor Merkel initiated this new idea, this new way of providing finance. The Commission has topped it up, so the Commission proposal is now looking at a sum of about 700 billion euros. As you know, short-term measures are already enforced from the European Stability Mechanism, from the European Investment Bank, and from SURE. This makes up roughly 540 billion euros. So we are really talking very, very serious money here, which we need to get Europe, get the Union back on their feet. 3, we want to make progress on the EU's migration and asylum policy, and I'm sure this finds great interest here in Malta. We are all aware that Malta is one of the member states affected most by irregular immigration, with the second highest number of total asylum applicants per million of population. Germany accounted for more than 23% of all first-time applicants, by far the highest number all over the EU. We urgently need a restart of the EU refugee and migration policy. Nowhere is this better to understand and to follow up on as here in Malta, and of course in Italy and Greece. In the coming month, probably in September, the EU Commission will table a proposal for a new common European asylum system, and we are very much looking forward to receiving that proposal and then discussing it with our EU partners. Externally, EU migration policy aims at strengthening cooperation and partnership between countries of origin and transit. 4, external action. The main points are stabilizing our neighborhood, improving our partnership with Africa, and working on our relation with China. Our focus will be on the Western Balkans, our eastern and southern neighborhood, especially Africa. We hope the envisaged EU-Africa summit will be possible at the end of October, despite the still ongoing restrictions and distancing rules. On China, we want to broaden the consensus on how to shape our partnership with this extremely important international player and partner. We hope that the EU-China leaders meeting can be held still during our presidency. Unfortunately, as you know, it had to be postponed again because of Corona restrictions. 5, and again a subject I think very close to the Maltese heart, Brexit, or rather, and I think more aptly called, shaping the future relationship with Great Britain. Of course, Britain will remain a very important and very special partner for the EU in all fields of cooperation. It also goes without saying that Britain will not be able to enjoy the same kind of privileges as it had during full membership. I'm pleased to state that all of us, we are completely behind Michel Barnier as our negotiator, and we trust that still during our presidency solutions can be found so that we avoid a hard Brexit with very, very grave consequences for the 1st of January 2021. 6, advancing the EU's green and digital transformation in a sustainable way. We need recovery measures to mitigate the Corona crisis. They also offer a chance for investment in sustainability, the so-called green recovery. With its European Green Deal, the EU Commission has presented an ambitious proposal. We want an equally ambitious follow-up in the Council. 7, strengthening European solidarity and cohesion. Social cohesion, social security, and solidarity are the cornerstones of a fair Europe. We want to promote this matter at all levels. Right now, this is about a strong, coordinated response to COVID-19. We are all aware of that. In the longer term, main issues will be the European Pillar of Social Rights, an unemployment insurance scheme, tackling youth unemployment, and promoting gender equality. 8, Strengthening the rule of law will be a top priority of our presidency. The rule of law regulation is a core element of a modernized multi-annual financial framework. Respect for the rule of law is a prerequisite for the confidence that EU spending in member states is sufficiently protected. We thus support the Commission's proposal to make EU spending conditional upon respect for the rule of law. 9, strengthening the EU's capacity to act at the global level. We want to shape an effective multilateralism and to measure up to our common responsibility as a global power. As German ambassador, I'm pleased to state that we know that Malta, especially as far as multilateralism is concerned, is firmly by our side, and we're really grateful for that. As far as European security is concerned, the common foreign and security policy will have to give maximum attention to dossiers as Libya, the Sahel, Iran, Syria, and the Middle East peace process. We want to revitalize the high-level political dialogue between the EU and the US. And finally, we want to promote cooperation between the EU and NATO, as difficult as that is, but I think we have to look at that much closer. And finally, 10, the cultural element of our presidential program. That's something, a new project called Earth Speaker, which has been devised by the Icelandic-Danish artist Ólafur Eliasson, who lives in Berlin. I think you might have seen some of his spectacular works all over the world. It's going to involve young Maltese, from children to young grown-ups. It will give them the opportunity to voice their concerns, their expectations for the future, for a green future, a better Europe. This is still very much a project in the making. Please follow up on Facebook, but I'm confident you'll be as amazed by it as we are. Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you for giving us a very good overview of the main priorities of this presidency. And my first question goes to you, Minister. You're also responsible for MEUSAC. And as the ambassador mentioned, one of the areas and priorities of this presidency is to have a fair and also a sustainable Europe. And here I emphasize on the word sustainable. And when we speak of sustainability, it's very far-reaching. You have the economic, the social, and the environmental aspect. How challenging do you see it would be for this presidency to address all these issues by making sure that they're done in a sustainable manner?
Well, thank you very much, Mandy. Ambassador, I'm very pleased that MEUSAC and the German embassy here in Malta are organizing and co-hosting this event. And I'm pleased to be in the company of my colleagues Evarist and Stefan. Well, when it comes to sustainability, we already have challenges regarding the Sustainable Development Goals till 2030, both as individual member states, individual countries, but also collectively as member states as part of the European Union. As the ambassador said, this is a very ambitious program that the current presidency is presenting, including when it comes to the issue of sustainability. And I dare say that it is very much important that even in the wake of the pandemic, we need to be even more sustainable and act as fair as possible. I don't put only the emphasis on sustainability, but also on fairness. And this has been already labeled as the Corona presidency, definitely because of the impact that the coronavirus and the pandemic has impacted all countries of the world, but also, of course, the European Union itself. So we need to act to try and mitigate as much as possible the impact on our economies. But I think that this has also to be done in a human way, because a lot of workers, which means a lot of families, have been suffering from the pandemic, not only from the health issue, but also from, let's say, the health of our economy, which needs to be given priority, as the ambassador said, but we need also to pay a lot of attention on how the workers, the families are impacted. So it's not only that we talk about the big numbers and the big action, but the numbers and the action needs to actually reach each and every individual, especially those who have been hardly hit by the pandemic. I'm confident that also MEUSAC will continue with its role of giving information and of course the other roles that MEUSAC has. But I think it is important that we communicate what is being done by the different institutions that the European Union has. And it's important that finally we always say that we have 27 member states that need to agree for things to happen. So you have the Commission that can propose, but then you have the Council of Ministers that in the end need also to agree. So while we have an ambitious program, and it cannot be otherwise by the largest member state, we were ambitious and they are the smallest member state, let alone the Germany. But I think we have also to focus our attention on how to really have an impact on our citizens, first and foremost. And actually the program that has been presented touches with the needs of the citizens. The challenge is how this is delivered to our citizens. And sustainability can be, let's say, a vehicle that we do not only talk about being sustainable, but actually we act in a sustainable way. And in doing so, even the economy will benefit from this. Of course, you mentioned the three pillars that sustainability is built upon. Economy is one, you have the social aspect, and of course the environment aspect. These three go hand in hand. They are not against each other. They go hand in hand. And being sustainable on all these three pillars, finally we can achieve what we want to achieve, which means that we do not only act today and forget about future generations, but the way we act today is of benefit for today's needs, but also not to hinder and do damage to future generations. And by doing so, of course, it's a win-win situation for all of us. So I wish all the best to our German friends. You have our support about your ambitious program, and definitely it will be an experience where we continue to work together with your country, but also in terms of your presidency, which after the 6 months we will always do the sum of what was achieved, but it's not a single-handed achievement. It should be a collective achievement, and I think that is the message that we need to continue saying, that the presidency can promote, the presidency can put on top of the agenda the goals and that it would like to achieve. But finally, it's up to also all member states to collaborate and together with the European institutions.
On this point, Minister Bartolo, the presidency has also emphasized a lot the issue of solidarity, which seems to be a bit of an abstract concept, but at the end of the day, it's very important at this particular point in time, I think, that we speak of actual ideas, and it's not just ideas, but actual practical examples of solidarity. How important do you think this issue should be addressed even by the presidency?
I would say Portugal, Slovenia, because Corona is not going away anytime soon. So you will be and other two partners will be dealing with this as well. As you said, the word solidarity is very nice sounding. It's like love, no? And who's going to be against solidarity? It's putting it into practice, which is difficult. And it's difficult. Okay, like this? Okay. Thank you for your solidarity. As I was saying, solidarity, no one is going to declare himself or herself against solidarity, but it's how to put it into practice. And it's very difficult to do so. And if we underestimate how difficult it is to do so, we won't have solidarity, because otherwise it will be just reduced to a kind of sentimental position or a nice sounding word, but then actually in practice, we don't make it happen. I'm sure that Germany wants to make it happen in practice, not just as a nice sentiment. We know how difficult it is, because just take one government, a single party government. It's very difficult even to coordinate the ministries of the same party in the same government. We know how difficult it is to coordinate coalition governments where you have different parties. Now imagine having this very ambitious and innovative project called the European Union, where you have 27 different countries with different governments, with different coalitions, in different geographical positions in the European Union, with their legitimate different national interests, how to find the common ground to have solidarity. Because if that goes away, the whole project will fail. So this is really an existential issue of how to actually embed solidarity in what we do, knowing full well that it is difficult. For example, I remember my first experience, my initial experience in the first few weeks of becoming minister. We had to deal a lot with COVID, basically trying to get equipment to Malta, trying to get medicine. At that point, we didn't see a lot of solidarity. And that was very worrying, because the first few weeks and months, not months, but let's say the first weeks, so as not to be pessimistic. But the first weeks, the single market, when it came to protective equipment, to medicine, to ventilators, became 27 single markets, 27 markets, because barriers were put up, no exports, prohibition of exports, and we weakened the European Union, because in that situation of you want to have what you needed for your people, then we had to go elsewhere. So the more we went outside the European Union, could be China, could be other, but that was a very big test. And at first, we were found wanting. Eventually, we picked up. And I think that was important, that we picked up. And solidarity, we could see the solidarity in practice. And then I can say, for example, and this is the good news of it, is when it came to the repatriation programs to help our citizens get back home, I think a lot of European countries showed in practice solidarity to help each other get their citizens home. So that was good. So we recovered. Now, one of the biggest tests, and this is very tough. This is very tough for Germany to achieve. It's very tough. Solidarity, for example, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to relocation. First of all, I think eventually this has to be seen in the bigger picture. Relocation is not the solution for irregular migration. If we see it like this, we'll get nowhere. We must understand that the post-COVID immigration scenario is going to be much more difficult than the pre-COVID immigration scenario. There is pressure on the sending countries for people to be pushed to move and to leave where they are because of fewer opportunities. I mean, some of the scenarios that we've been hearing are terrifying, like 27 million Africans pushed into extreme poverty because of the economic impact of COVID. Because it seems that in Africa, the economic impact is, is more serious than the actual health one. So there is pressure there for them to move. The transit countries like Libya, like Morocco, like Tunisia, like Algeria, also have fewer opportunities to offer a better life because their jobs are being lost there as well. As receiving countries, we also have a problem because opportunities are also going to be fewer as we try to recover our economic situation. So for receiving countries to accept to have migrants relocated from other countries, it's not easy at all. I can say this in confidence. I know that we're in a public forum. We have come to a point where we want to help each other, but governments tell us, please don't say that we're helping you. Please don't say how many we took, because this will have a backlash with our electorate. Now that is really serious. That is really serious. I'm very grateful that we are finding some support. But to have some governments tell us, please don't say how much we're helping you because it would put us into difficulties with our electorates. I'm not surprised that this is the case because unfortunately we know how easy it is to whip up hate and to whip up xenophobia and racism. So now to put in a mechanism where we help each other through relocation, it's going to be tough. Let's try and help each other. Let's try and help each other have such a mechanism. But let's be realistic. Let us ensure, and I'm sure that we know this, but we need to think then of other, because you cannot have solidarity only in relocation. Let's think of other measures that we need to take so that we have to resort to relocation less. So let's use first and foremost, and this is an issue of solidarity as well, the post-Cotonou agreement with Africa. It's important that we hurry and exchange and build plans with Africa for its economic and social development there, because the longer we take, the more difficult it's going to be. I just want to, focus minds. Those who are being born today, when they are 30, the proportion of and the ratio of Africans to Europe is going to be 5:1. 5 Africans for every European. And not just that, 5 young Africans for practically one, not all of us will be old. I mean, I won't be old or young. I simply won't be. But that's it's not my problem in 30 years' time. But we need to do that because if we want young Africans to stay in Africa and build their future there, instead of risking their lives crossing the Sahara and the Mediterranean, we need to make sure that we give them the chance to build manufacturing and other sectors of the economy so that they create jobs over there. We have to align our policies. We can't simply tell them, stay there, don't cross, but then we deny them the possibility to really develop. Because we take profits out of there, we take taxes out of there, we take resources out of there, we even take their best brains out of there. So, and I think this is very important to work with Africa. And then to ensure that the other things in place, like for example, most of the people migrating today are not asylum seekers. So let's have processes which are as fast as possible to ensure that we help the most vulnerable who deserve asylum and are eligible for the asylum. The others are returned back to where they have left. Because otherwise, if we don't do all these things, it's going to be much more difficult to achieve solidarity in practice. Thank you.
Thank you for a very detailed answer of practical solidarity. And now I ask Dr. Stefan Zrinzo Azzopardi, who is the Parliamentary Secretary responsible for EU funds. So when I speak of MFF, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. we are in a situation where the member states need to agree on a new budget for the period 2021-2027. The Commission even launched a very ambitious financial plan for the next 7 years. However, if this is not approved, this program cannot really start being applied in practice. How do you feel it's important that this, even particularly this presidency, tries to conclude the negotiations of the new MFF?
And the invitation and this opportunity to have this vivid discussion together with Ambassador and colleague ministers. I would like to wish all the best of success to the German presidency, and allow me to thank the Croatian presidency that had quite a tough job to organize all those meetings virtually. It was the first time that this kind of formula was used, and hopefully we have more meetings meeting each other. And rather than handling the crisis, we start talking more about recovery. And I think the main theme of this presidency has two very important words: recovery and together. And I think it might sound just as a slogan, together for Europe's recovery. Yet I believe that in essence, the word recovery and together being put in the same message shows how important that we work together in order to achieve recovery, and that there will be no strong recovery unless we understand that we have to work more together. The reality of COVID has put us into a situation, as my colleague Minister Bartolo has just explained, that it is pointless to try and achieve success in these circumstances on your own. We have to find all the best conduits, we have to find the best formula in order to work more together. And this also applies in relation to your question. This multi-annual financial framework is a sui generis. It is one of a kind for two reasons. First of all, it is a package, a financial package that has to be agreed to post-COVID. It was already quite a surreal situation when we tried to come to an agreement last February. One has to bear in mind that this was the first MFF post-Brexit. The scenarios that were within which the 2013 agreement was achieved were, I would say, quite different from those that we had last February. Even more now, post the pandemic, the situation is completely different, to the extent that even Europe, all the member states, as well as the institutions, felt the necessity to go forward with a proposal for the MFF, but also to make additional funds for recovery, the recovery plan that is being proposed. So basically, we are in a situation whereby the structure of the MFF is now being supplemented with the additional funds, with a different structure that is in addition to the MFF. Yet, however, I go back to what I was saying earlier, that this recovery, in order to achieve this agreement, we have to work it out together. And each country has its own story to say. It has its own realities. I take, for instance, Malta. Malta has particular situations that need to be addressed irrespective of the pandemic. For example, the fact that we are an island in the south of Europe, in the Mediterranean, that gives us certain realities which, unless addressed financially and in the strategies that we adopt, hinder our possibilities of economic growth. Yes, we have registered pre-COVID certain successful economic growth. However, COVID has shown certain vulnerabilities. The fact that a substantial part of our economy, tourism, has come to a complete standstill. Not a decrease, but a complete standstill. Hopefully we start seeing tourists coming back to Malta. But it has exposed, the reality has exposed quite a substantial part of our jobs, our economy, our economic activity as in relation to this, which then puts into perspective that one narrates the numbers, the economic growth numbers, one will not be saying the whole the whole picture, but there are certain ingrained, I would say, realities that have to be taken into account when one is discussing and negotiating and finally agreeing both on the MFF as well as the recovery fund. We are in a situation where we have vulnerabilities also to certain realities in relation to job creation. We've had quite a steady growth in job creation in Malta, but once again, we have seen that we need to do more investment to ensure more sustainability on that aspect as well. However, it is evident, and both people from the private sector have been raising this point, a number of countries. I think I've also followed comments that were given by Commissioner Hahn in the past few hours, where everybody is making it clear that there's a necessity to find a way forward and come to an agreement. I think there's also another important point that one must mention in relation to your question, Mandy. The question of credibility. Minister Bartolo has mentioned the existential realities if solidarity is not in place. I would also add that we are also talking about the EU's credibility of finding a way of politicians coming from different member states with different national interests, that at the end of the day, we have to find a manner in which to take decisions, come to a conclusion, and yes, work together towards recovery.
Thank you. Before, I would like to ask you, even Ambassador, on this issue of solidarity and together, because I think there's also an external dimension to it in terms of how the EU wants to project itself in the rest of the world. But perhaps before we can take a few questions, so involve also participants who are following us. I just want to remind everyone that the session is being recorded. So just a question, whoever wants to make a comment or ask a question, there's the tab raise hand. So you just click on it and then there's one. Okay, I'm informed there's one. Yes. Can you please introduce yourself as well so that... It's Ahmed Bugri. Yes.
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry, I'm trying to put on my video, but I can't.
No problem.
Yeah.
I think we can still hear your question.
Yes, Mandy and Excellencies, what a wonderful discussion and a very good discussion indeed. Africa has been mentioned a number of times, and of course, Europe and Africa are not just neighbors, but they are tied together in history, as we can see in this Black Lives Movement, Life Matter movement. One of the things that I just wanted to add, in agreeing with what Minister Bartolo has said, is looking towards Africa and aligning the expectations of both continents. In my view, there are two things. Number one is Europe looks at immigration or migration in terms of control and management. Africa looks at migration in terms of development because of course, past histories and deprivation. As Mr. Bartolo has said, the lack of opportunities in Africa did not just happen. It has historical roots. And I think that the new strategy that Germany is going to also spearhead in terms of Africa-EU relations is very important to align both expectations and to discuss very openly the impact that will have on the youth or the members of both continents. My question would be, how can the European Union, which somehow in this joint Africa-EU relations, be able to support its African counterpart, which lack the capacity, both financial, human resources, to be able to come up with a program that is beneficial to both? That is the question that I would like to look at, because the African Union has got certain programs which sometimes are not discussed. Number one, the African Union has come up with the Agenda 2063, which outlines a free movement of persons in Africa. 80% of the movement of people happen in Africa. not into Europe. Less than 5% of people who move from Africa reach Europe. So we need to strengthen the movement within Africa itself. The second part is also the internationalization, helping member states. But sometimes we see an EU that takes a disjointed effort in terms of undermining EU institutions and dealing bilaterally with countries. For example, in the Valletta Trust Fund, most of it has gone into border management and control. How can we align the expectations?
Can you
yes,
sorry
the
for
expectation.
No.
So,
Can you
sorry.
wrap up so we can take a few more questions, please?
Okay, my question is, how can we align the expectations, but also the impact of this on both continents? Thank you very much indeed. And I'm sorry for a long question.
Okay, we'll take 2 more questions and then perhaps have a reply to these questions and then proceed. Hopefully we'll have more time to discuss a few more things. I'm seeing Ben. Can you please introduce yourself? Hi, it's Ben Rizzo. Hi, Ben. Can you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. Ambassador, Minister Abela, Minister Bartolo, and Mr. Zrinzo. My question is, seeing the impact of Germany, which will be followed by Portugal and Slovenia, will the targets put in by Germany follow up? Is there already organization? Is there already movement that the targets that are being put in will be followed by Portugal and Slovenia as well? Because as I am seeing, the topics are very wide. Obviously, Germany will stress more perhaps on the post-COVID situation. The other question which I would like to ask, perhaps going on to what Minister Bartolo was saying, is about the persons traveling from Africa to Europe. Is there an understanding to perhaps introduce qualified majority voting when it comes to how the distribution of people coming in to Italy, Malta, Greece, and Spain be more widely entertained by other European countries? Last week I was in a meeting where the person from Sweden was saying that the Swedish government has put in place that no migrants will go to Sweden after 2017. I don't agree to this because it's a joint European effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. We'll have one last question. I think it's Chinese ambassador, if I'm noting properly. Yes.
Sorry, why don't we just listen to the answers to the last 2 questions first? Because I have a comment, I don't really have a question. So can I make my comment after we listen to the answers to those questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, just to address, perhaps Minister Bartolo can address Ahmed Bougri's issue the issue raised on migration, and also Ben's Rizzo question, and then we can address perhaps the issue of the external action and how the presidency will shape that. So,
I agree with Ahmed that if you see how immigration is seen from African eyes, it's different to how it's seen from European eyes. The best African leaders, civil, political, religious, all say that for the good of Africa itself, for the good of all the 54 African countries, there must be development there. It's the future must be built within their countries. As Ahmed was saying, we only get the tip of the iceberg who cross over because most of them remain in neighboring countries in Africa itself. So what we need to do is align our policies. That it's not about charity, it's not about aid, but it's development, it's investment, it's trade, it's investing in people and giving them the possibility to then sell us their products which they have manufactured on the continent. Are we ready to do that? if we're not ready to do that, what kind of jobs are they going to create over there? If we are ready to import a tomato, but not canned tomatoes, because we want to can it ourselves. So that's I think is very important. The other one, in terms of relocation, I hear the German proposal, and to a certain extent even the Commission's proposal. It's very ambitious. It has to be, unanimous. Everyone has to participate in it. Now, how can be different? There is talk of that the how is different, but if the issue of qualified majority voting in this area would be, Ben would have a big problem trying to come up with a formula that would be accepted by the 27 countries. Ben, okay?
Okay, just to wrap up a bit on this issue of solidarity, and even Dr. Zrinzo Azzopardi mentioned the word together, which I think is one of the highlights of the priority of this presidency. How do you feel if we had to use the word together, that Europe can come together in terms of its relations and building relations with Africa? You also mentioned, for example, China. So could this be the right opportunity to portray the EU as a global actor within the world order?
Without trying to be too dramatic, I think this is the right point in time. We must not lose more time in this very crucial field. I think we have achieved a lot. I'm not quite sure when Henry Kissinger said, it must have been about 40 years ago, give me a phone number if I want to call the EU, whom do I call? I think we have achieved a lot since then, but there's still more to do. And I think we have to realize, beyond the sometimes regional, local, national bickering that we witness so often, that we only stand a chance as a united continent in the world if we want to stay true to our values, human rights and everything that's connected to that, number one. Number two, if we want to preserve our prosperity. And number three, if we still want to play a role in shaping the world of the future, which is, and that's very much what we have in our program, which is greener, more just, more fair, and sustainable. So I think we have to realize we have to look a bit beyond our daily problems, and COVID has this two-faced effect. On the one hand, we are all very much concerned with what's happening every day. How do I organize my life? How can I support my family with all the employment problems? But on the other hand, we have to realize this is the chance to pull all our forces together and continue with greater vigor and grab the chances that are there for us in the world. Because if we don't manage to do that, we will be, how should I say that? There's no way back. There's no way back, and then we are just let me put it like this, a pile of tiny nations all across the EU who are probably still interested in attractive markets for other nations, but we are not an important player in international politics. And again, I think we owe it to our population. We are 500 million, let's not forget about that. And we owe it to our values and ideals that make the EU what it is. So let's be optimistic.
I think you also mentioned a very valid point when you say we owe it to our people. We owe it to our people, and here perhaps I want to discuss a bit the role of the citizen in all of this. We can stay here and discuss the macro issues, migration, Brexit, MFF, but really and truly what matters is how we're affecting the daily life of citizens, and that is where you have a lot of misconceptions. I mean, even with what happened during the past weeks, there was a pandemic and an infodemic because there was so much fake news going on. Minister Abela, how do you see how important it is to put the citizen at the center of all the discussions not just about the EU, but even how the EU really has an effect and an impact on our daily lives?
I think it is crucial also to convey the right message. It is also crucial to not only to convey the right message, but also to shape our policies in accordance with, let's say, the needs also of our citizens. Whatever we do, we are doing this collectively for our citizens, and problems will start if the European citizens do not feel that Europe, the institutions, are close to their daily needs. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to shape our policies in accordance with whatever and whoever says something, because that will put us in problems, which means that, for example, if some are talking in a certain way on the issue of migration, which we know that certain people talk in a very, let's say, bad way, not to say other things. So I think that it's important that we have our policies in place, not in accordance to what certain people say, but in accordance to what is right to do. And I think that conveying the right message, that even the European Union and together with our African partners, we are partners, not something that, you know, we need to close our borders and not have discussions at different levels. And it is very much important that we convey this message, that we need to work with our African partners. And I stress that this is a partnership, not something that we look down on Africa. And of course, it should be a win-win situation. So I was very pleased that we were the second member state that we have published, and we have a strategy with Africa. And actually also Ursula von der Leyen, the current president of the Commission, sent a message for that event, and also said that it is her wish that later on this year, the European Union will also publish a strategy between the European Union and Africa, which is it's very much important also to convey the right message when it comes to cooperation between both unions. But it should be centered around citizens. So even combating misinformation and fake news. At times we complain within the European Union structures that we are not spending enough money to combat this. And I know this is one of the priorities also for the EAS also to do and to share the right information. So this is it's not easy, it's an ongoing process. And I know it's not easy because I had to deal with migration from different perspectives since December 2015. And December 2014 actually. So, and we had different circumstances where we had also to face, even locally, certain messages that were being conveyed in a wrong way. So yes, our policies should be citizen-centered, but in accordance with what we believe, what are the principles that the European Union was built upon. So, and solidarity is one of the principles. And as one commissioner used to say, solidarity is not a la carte. So you can't choose where you show solidarity, and other times and for other circumstances, you opt out from solidarity. Yeah. There is only one solidarity.
Exactly. Okay, I don't know if we have perhaps just one question. I'm seeing just one raised hand. I know that perhaps we can do maximum of 15 minutes more, so perhaps take 2 questions. There's also the Chinese ambassador. Perhaps we can take the question now, and then we can try to conclude, because I know the ministers need to be in Parliament as well. So, yes, Joseph Likari, please. Can we unmute Joseph?
Can you give me the microphone?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
You can ask the question. Would really appreciate if you keep it short and brief so that we can then conclude.
Can you? Okay, let me, first of all, thanks to everybody, all the participants on illegal immigrants. As Minister Bartolo said, relocation is not a solution. The solution is development, but most African countries have been independent since the 1960s. In 60 years, there has been some development, not enough. So there could be enough development by the end of this century, or optimistically by, let's say, 2050. So what is the immediate solution? That's one thing. And we're speaking about Africa, and the problem is no longer Africa alone. The majority of illegal immigrants on some of the ships have been from Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. So we have to develop Bangladesh and Pakistan, as well as the whole of Africa, to be able to stop the influx of illegal immigration. Obviously, this is not the solution. So is there a possible solution of having some kind of organization in Libya itself to filter all potential immigrants from Africa and Asia and repatriate them to their country of origin from Libya, instead of them having to take the dangerous journey by sea? Thank you.
Can you conclude, please? Okay, thank you. Can Chinese ambassador, please?
I want to thank you, Walter and Ms. Mandy Falzon, for a kind invitation. Congratulations to Germany for assuming the EU presidency. And this is obviously a challenging time. So I wish you every success. And I want to say that I also want to thank my very good friends, Minister Bartolo, Minister Abela, and Honorable Azzopardi, for sharing your thoughts. And I've benefited a lot from your insight. As Walter mentioned, China-EU relationship will be a major topic during the German presidency. So I would just like to say a few words. First of all, I want to say that China supports a strong and united Europe. We support the European integration process, and we hope to see Europe playing a bigger role on the global stage. And secondly, as far as China-EU relationship is concerned, as you may know, this year marks the 45th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between China and the EU. And our cooperation has come a long way during the past 45 years to the benefit of both sides. We have set up a comprehensive strategic partnership, and we have carried out cooperation across the board. Now, we're in this era where we have to combat COVID-19. At the same time, we're working to achieve speedy economic recovery. And we have to remember that we live in a globalized world. So this makes it all the more important for China and the EU to intensify cooperation. I think we need to work together to tackle global challenges such as climate change, terrorism, and communicable diseases, so on and so forth. And in this regard, I want to say that China and Europe have supported each other in combating COVID-19, and we have demonstrated this spirit of solidarity, a term that has been frequently used today. And secondly, I think that China and the EU should work together to promote free trade and to maintain stability in the global industrial and supply chains. And thirdly, I think that we need to work together to uphold multilateralism and support the UN and its specialized agencies. And not long ago, the Chinese leaders and EU leaders held a summit meeting, and the two sides reached important common understandings on further enhancing our cooperation in the future. I think that following their guidance, there will be more cooperation between our two sides, and I'm sure there will be fruitful cooperation between China and EU during the German presidency. Thank you.
For your comments. As I said, we'll try to conclude, and my conclusion would be that whenever I see the agenda and the priorities of each presidency of the Council of the EU, I'm always amazed at how ambitious the plans are. And usually they try to deal with even the German presidency. There's several topics which we haven't discussed: digitization, Brexit, the Green Deal, which are all going to be very important topics in the next coming months. But perhaps I would like to hear a bit your views of what do you really see, or what do you want to really see happening in the next 6 months? Perhaps we can start from the ambassador. And
Look, thank you, Mandy, and thank you for the very interesting comments. And basically, and I don't want to sound too pessimistic, we don't have 6 months. We have much less. That's always the case with the second half of the year. The presidencies who have the second half. There's going to be a quite profound summer break, I assume, not only in Brussels, but in all the member states to different degrees. Towards the end of the year, towards Christmas, again, we will not have full December. Against this, we have some rock-hard timelines. Number one, that's the MFF, which will have to be finalized during the course of this month of July in order to put it into place, in order for the EU as a complicated clockwork to function without any problems from the 1st of January 2020. So it's really will be a bit of a race against time before the summer break. After the summer break, I think it will be Brexit, because again, there's a lot of administrative consequences involved once the rules, the playing field has been defined. So again, I think we probably have September to define our future relationship with Great Britain in order to avoid a hard Brexit from 1st of January, which would be detrimental both to Britain and to the EU. Nobody wants that, I hope. But the challenge is not to let the other topics drop off the table, because Africa migration is just as important. And this is why our program in the German original takes 24 pages A4. And it was very difficult to prepare for our meeting here, because it's so difficult to separate the top priorities from the priorities. And this is exactly, and I'm grateful for the gentleman here pointing it out, all of them. This is a joint effort. We are the presidency, so we take the lead, but without the full support from all member states and a constructive support and a flexible support, we do not stand any chance of making this a success. And I know we have an excellent exchange with the Maltese government, a continuous one, and in many fields we completely agree, and we have had wonderful support from Malta in the past. We need it from all member states. We are not the blockheads some people assume us to be. We are not fixed on our ideas. We mention the topics and we have to find a solution together. We do not want to impose a solution on anybody, but if this will not be a success, it will be a failure of all of us. Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Abela?
Well, if I had to pick one issue, I will mention to overcome the consequences of the pandemic, because that will be a start or a restart for other things to achieve then. And I really believe that this can really make a positive impact on the citizens, because if they feel that, okay, the pandemic is not the fault of the European Union or any other country. But at least it is it depends on us as well if we want to recover. So I think that we should look back and learn from the past. When we had challenges in the past, we opted for austerity measures. And with hindsight, we know that austerity measures did not help people, families, the economies to come out of those difficulties. So the fact that we want to have an economic recovery, but together with that also a social one, means that we will also focus on the citizens. And I think this, if I had to pick one item, will be this one. Of course, the other topics are very relevant, and we wish, or I wish, that we achieve all this together. But given that I had to pick one, I will pick this one. But of course, to keep in mind the lessons learned from the past, not to repeat maybe what I will refer to them as past mistakes, because I firmly believe that they were intended to be the solution, but with hindsight, we know it was not the case. So I think that the recovery, economic and the social one, which keeps in mind the interests of the citizens, will be my takeout from this.
Good. Mr. Bartolo?
I will take two levels. They seem to be extreme, but one reinforces the other. One at the micro level, ultimately, and every presidency is part of the voyage. Ultimately, the EU is judged on what does it do for me in my daily life. We need the honesty of national politicians, not to blame the EU for what goes wrong and to take the benefit for what goes wrong. So, but that is important. And I agree with Carmelo that at least this time, we are reacting differently to what happened in 2008. Because in the financial crisis, the little man and little woman had to carry a burden much more than they deserve. Whereas this time, I think we are taking care of it. The other one is the macro level. Is the EU ready to be a player on the world stage, or is it happy to be in the supporters club? Sometimes, and that is where I think it's a problem, we are in the supporters club and not a player. Obviously, quite a lot will happen on what's going to happen in the United States in the next elections, because we need America to understand that the transatlantic relationship is not one way. It's not simply to be a cheerleader, but it's to have the dignity of equals and working together. Because, and Joe Ricard was right when we mentioned Africa, but he was right to mention also Asia. The world is the world. And if we are to have a future for this world, we must find ways of working together, all of us. We have a choice either to tear each other apart, not just in the EU, I'm saying, but in the world, or to find ways of engaging and working together. I might be naive, but I always go back to 1962 when there was the Cuban Missile Crisis. If at that time we had politicians who were capable of drawing the world back from the nuclear tragedy and disaster that would have happened, because we took care of each other's interests and good. Is it not possible for us to try and find, within us, the energy, the ideas, the attitude to try and work together, as the slogan of the German presidency says? Thank you.
Thank you. Azzopardi.
One of the main objectives that is being mentioned by this presidency is the Conference on the Future of Europe, whereby it is an important event. It had to start earlier. Unfortunately, all timetables went haphazard. But I think that, and I'm mentioning this because it ties to a lot of other things. When we talk about the future of Europe, I think that each and every one of us who represents our respective nations or people who are players within the institutions, the debate on the future of Europe should not be tied to the way we structure the European Union, how we structure the Commission, the Parliament, the institutions. It should not be a dialogue, a debate on institutions, but it should be a debate about the citizen. And if we bear in mind the citizen in every decision we take, I think we will make Europe much closer to the citizen in general. The MFF and the Recovery Fund might sound to be a macroeconomic tool, but in reality, it is about the future of the young people's jobs. It is about the future of everyone's job. It is about how we will develop our countries, how we will have a better environment tomorrow, how we will renew the way economies work. It is about each and every one of us. If we talk about migration, we are talking about people, we're not talking about numbers. So when we have, and I think this should be the spirit, that although it is maybe one of the things listed in the German presidency, the discussion on the future of Europe, I think it is a wider debate beyond the conference itself. It is the way we should work. It is the way how we should develop and transform what our fathers have given to us after a very deep crisis, the Second World War, when they decided not to fight each other anymore, but they sat down and built this Europe that we have today. And once that we went through another difficult time, I think it is time not just to sit down and reflect, but to understand that the essence of politics, the essence of the way forward, should not be just the institutions, but the institutions for the people and with the people. Thank you.
Fitting conclusion to this discussion. And as I said, unfortunately, we had several other topics to discuss. I mean, the EU Green Deal, digitization, Brexit is also going to be high on the agenda in the next 6 months, but obviously we ran out of time. I would really like to thank everyone, all the participants following us from all across Europe, the journalists who are with us today, the staff at MEUSAC and the German Embassy and the German Maltese Circle. Thank you very much. Ambassador, thank you very much for your support. Thank you to the ministers and parliamentary secretary for your participation. Obviously, we as MEUSAC continue as much as possible to encourage debate on whatever is happening on the European level, and I really do encourage you to continue to follow our channels on what is happening at the new level. So thank you very much for joining us, and I wish you all a pleasant evening. Thank you.